if you're in if you're positioning for the wrong trend heading into 2026, you are in the wrong place. I have two guests today that are going to help you get into the right place, and we're going to talk about all things crypto. So we want to make sure that you're not only in the right trends, but you're also in the right projects. And you're missing that real opportunity if you do not stay throughout this entire stream, because we're going to be covering quite a bit here today. And I have two awesome guests with me today. Here they are. We have Taylor Shrum and Tim Warren. How are you guys doing today?
What's going on, boys? How we doing?
I'm doing better than I deserve, Crux. Can you believe it?
I love hearing that. This is going to be a really fun show because we cannot see each other whatsoever. So your guys, as you're watching, your guess is as good as ours on how this is going to go. So,
well, this is definitely my first live stream. Now I will make sure it's even better, and I appreciate everybody working with me through these things. But I do have a poll for you guys going on over there. So which to hear your guys' takes, but you'll have to stay around for about at least 10-20 minutes before we review that one. So okay, now so let's go ahead and just jump into the very first segment, and we'll start with Tim. What trend do you think people are overrating, and then also what trend do you think people are sleeping on? And again, this is all of crypto. You could start with real world assets, you could start with DeFi, but I want to know, which one do you think is overrated and then underrated?
I don't know if I have an answer for overrated, because I mean, retail interest is at darn near close to historic lows. I mean, you're not gonna go to all-time low, right? Because at one point there's probably only 6 people in crypto. Mm-hmm. But compared to anything recently, compared to recent pumps, we're back down at pretty extreme low levels. So there's not a lot of hype going into anything right now from the retail position. So I don't necessarily have an answer for that one, especially of the options you're giving me here. I think what's actually very interesting is in the poll that you have, and I want to bring it back up there. I don't know why I can't see it right now. Yeah, the poll's gone. Of the poll options I saw, you had AI, you had real world assets, and then you had forgive me, the third one was which one?
The third one was decentralized finance, DeFi.
Decentralized finance. Okay. I think all three trends can do well. I'll tell you why. I think if I was going to say one of the three of those was overrated, I'm going to go with decentralized finance. And kind of why I just said, right? Retail interest is extremely low right now. Back in 2021, you had the huge argument and fight in communities about, well, that coin's not decentralized enough, and this one's just going to feed the banks, it's going to feed institutions. And so in 2021, it was a battle of who can be the most decentralized, who seems to be the most in pro of retail investors, the everyday person, instead of the whales, the institutions. That's not going to be the case moving forward. And I don't want to just single it out to 2026. I'm talking about going forward for at least the next couple of years. I think they're actually, as scary as it might sound, it might be a couple of years before decentralization and therefore full-blown DeFi becomes the most important aspect of crypto. And it's going to sound stupid because, again, you go back to the vision that Satoshi Nakamoto had when he created Bitcoin, and then the subsequent coins that came out afterwards. It was all about creating freedom for people. But this is the period of time right now where the institutions and the banks, they're getting their hands on it, and they're gonna leave some smudge, right? They're gonna have a period of time where it's more about the technology, less about the decentralization. In the future, people will wake up and say, well, banks still suck, centralization still sucks, let's get back to decentralization. But I don't think that's the period right now. I think it's way more about the technology. I think it's way more about getting the Web 2 world, the Web 2 world into blockchain, into Web 3, into this whole new financial and technological ecosystem that's going to move the world forward. So I think if you're going to ask me which of the three is the highest, because that was the same part of the question, I'm personally going with real world assets. And it just, if you look at the news, if you look at how things are operating right now, even the holdup right now with the Clarity Act, it's a battle right now between your crypto friendly companies, not even crypto friendly companies. It really, on the surface, is just Coinbase. It's a little deeper than that, but Coinbase versus the banks. the banks are going to get what they want in all of this. There's going to be negotiation. There's going to be back and forth, but the banks are going to succeed here. And that to me tells me DeFi isn't the forefront. It is really about tokenization. It's about stablecoin use case and what that kind of who that benefits more than the other. So I'm looking at that one as the most prevalent one. The only reason I wouldn't put AI as the top, I think AI still can do well. People have been asking that question now for months. Is AI in a bubble? I don't think it is. But AI really is what popped up 2025, right? Anyone who says that 2025 was a great bull market, it's like, okay, remove AI from the stock market, even the crypto market, and tell me how 2025 actually looks. I mean, even when you look at the S&P 500 and the QQQ that went to new highs, it's like, hey, let's remove NVIDIA from the list. Let's remove the AI stocks from the list. Did the S&P 500 actually perform that well? The answer would be no. So AI had a great 2025. I don't think it's in a bubble, though, but because it had such a great 2025, I think it could take a back seat to the real world asset stocks and cryptos in the year 2026.
All right, yeah. So Avalanche versus Cardano is a video I just dropped a couple days ago, and the real thing that stood out between the two and why I did give Avalanche the win was because of the tokenization. You have some of the biggest names out there. Actually, 9 out of the 10 biggest institutions in the world are plugged right in there with RWAs. So, Tim, I think you have a very good take right there. Now, for the DeFi being the one that you feel like is a little overrated, I don't exactly. I think there's a couple other niches in there that I would throw in there before that, but let's.
I was going with of the three.
Okay, gotcha. I guess
and I told
should
you,
have worded
I'm
that.
not saying DeFi crashes, burns, and dies. I'm just saying, looking at those three, I think that one lags behind the other two.
Sure. All right. But let's see what Taylor Shrum has for us.
Okay. So which one's overrated?
Mm-hmm.
It depends, because there's a very, very, very big difference between short-term overrated and long-term overrated. And I think that AI crypto, I think I've softened up to it a little bit, but my position historically has been that AI crypto doesn't make sense technically, and there's some exceptions to that. I was actually able to do a little bit of research over the last in December on Near, and I think that the Near protocol has a little more promise than I'd thought. They've made some good pivots, but I would say that the only AI crypto that I'm comfortable investing in is still Tau, right? So that's not to say that the others aren't worth looking into. But so I guess I would categorically have to say that I think that AI crypto is probably the overrated one. But I think that's more in the long term. I think in the short term, AI crypto can definitely pump, because AI is just the buzzword that, people who are of the mind that they are smart, they're going to think that that's going to go higher, and it probably will, because of that self-fulfilling prophecy in the short term. I think long term, though, it just doesn't, the core of my thesis on AI being overbought is that essentially the US corporations have access to liquidity, and they have access to data centers in just a much more accelerated, streamlined way. So a decentralized protocol like Near or others, that they're not really in a position to compete with OpenAI and Grok and Anthropic and Gemini and others like that. But I think Virtuals actually is pretty decent, and I think that that Tau is definitely on the right track with what they're trying to do. They're trying to be the brakes. They're not trying to be the accelerator, and I think that's the proper positioning for decentralized blockchain to insert value into the AI story. Underrated, I actually think that it's DeFi. I think that names like Aave specifically is extremely underbought, and that Aave is going to melt some faces here pretty soon, maybe even on the other side of the crypto, the Clarity bill. And the tokenization, I think, is probably accurately hyped at this point. I think that it's hyped to perfection, so to speak. Larry Fink and Brian Armstrong were on the same stage at, I think it was the PitchBook conference in November, and the takeaway was tokenization is going to be important. Since then, we've heard every major bank representative come out and talk positively about tokenization. I think though that there's something to make clear, and I think your audience would really benefit from me saying that it's not all coins that claim to be tokenization coins are going to do well. You need to really understand that, like, what tokenization is, and which coins specifically are going to be accretive to the on-chain activity that is tokenization. So I think the biggest beneficiaries of tokenization are going to be Solana and Ethereum, right? Because those are the chains that are going to get a lot of the tokenization. BNB chain too. We don't like to talk about them as much, but BNB chain is going to get a lot of tokenization from more international financial service providers, and then Ondo is going to do pretty well. And then there's a handful of others that I probably don't even know about that are just going to have crazy upside. But just don't think that the super small mid cap 50 coin portfolio that you call RWA is going to do well.
I have a little bit of pushback on that, actually.
Okay.
Obviously disagreement's great for your stuff. You don't like the shows where everybody just comes and holds hands and agrees with each other. Number one, and I don't know if we actually are on different sides of this, Shrum. I disagree when you say properly hyped real world assets, because yes, there's a lot of favorable conversation, but there's almost no movement yet happening with price action on tokenized stocks. I mean, you even look at the news, like you mentioned, Solana's crushing it, Ethereum's crushing it, Ondo is crushing it from a fundamental standpoint, but price is not followed whatsoever. So I would say that's not properly hyped. If we were already seeing some pretty aggressive uptrends with the real world assets tokens, then I would say, yeah, okay, properly hyped, but we're not. We're seeing the fundamentals. We're seeing the foundations be laid for something epic, and we haven't seen the structure of the house be put up yet. The other thing I would say is, while I agree with some things you say here, I think it's really important that you put the majority of your, let's say you have a portion of your portfolio that's like, hey, this is for real world assets. I think the majority of it should be in the actual utilized cryptos. And that's kind of what Shrum's getting at here. Solana and Ethereum and Ondo, and there's others. I don't want to disrespect all the legit ones, but there's other ones out there. But when it comes to the other real world asset tokens, whether or not they're actually utilized or not, let's remember that things still follow trends, and trends can get hot and heavy, and stupid coins can pump for no reason. It just was, hey, right now everyone's talking about decentralization. That coin looks decentralized. Let's go heavy on that coin. There's been periods of times where AI tokens, I mean, you said it earlier, and I agree with you. There's not a lot of AI tokens out there that I fully trust. That did not stop periods of time with booms where every coin associated with AI whatsoever, whether the technology was good or not, had major rallies. So in the same breath, while I myself will have the majority of my real world asset money in the likes of Ethereum and Solana and Ondo and Chainlink, that doesn't necessarily mean some of the smaller ones that were built for real world assets won't have major pumps as well, because effectively people are idiots, people are sheep. You're going to look at some of these coins like Solana and Ethereum and the top 100 ranked coins, and you look at the market caps being in the multiple billions, and you're like, okay, there's only so much more money I can make here. I mean, everyone wants to get rich overnight. But you go look at this other one, it's like, oh, look at this new real world asset project that's only a $5 million market cap. I'm going to go heavily in that one. And what you see is these major rug pulls, but let's not pretend that this isn't where we see the 100Xs over a 2-week period, and then it all crashes 90% right afterwards. Like, that's why you want to be safe with the bigger picks. But I actually do think we're going to see some pretty crazy pumps of small caps and mid caps in the real world asset space if/when the real world asset trend is the dominating trend. Nonsense coins will make major pumps because that is the world of crypto. Until there is full-blown regulation saying you cannot create a meme coin, you cannot create crap coins. Until that happens, which hopefully doesn't happen, you will see nonsense pumps all the time within certain narratives. So that's my pushback. I don't know, Crux, if you want to respond to that, or Shrum, you want to retort to that. But
yeah, just really quickly, I agree with the following statement. Tokenization is properly hyped, but it is not properly priced. Okay. And then the second point that you're kind of getting at with the AI tokens, if retail returns, which I think that it's not so much of an if, it's a when, but that win could potentially be the second half of 2026. We may not see retail come back for a while. So as long as it's mainly institutions and kind of crypto native people, and there's a distinction between crypto native money and retail. Retail is like when your grandma comes in and she's downloading the Coinbase app, right? If it remains institutions and crypto native folks, I don't think we get a huge flurry of AI explosion. I think everything kind of concentrates into the coins that the venture capitalists have created, and they have had this vision for institutions to come in and invest in their projects. But that will create upside movement, and then people will get rich and tell their friends, and then retail piles in. So I agree with your original statement. I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think we're using different vernacular to get to the same place.
All right. And also for the purpose of the stream, we'll stick with 2026 just to give people like a specific time frame. I do think AI has a very bright future. I do also agree with you as well, Shrum, as far as Tau. The subnets over there are unbelievable. But let's go with Crux's underrated pick, and we're going to go with real world assets. So this play right here, you'll see this chart. It's called Ondo Finance. Might be your first time hearing it, but it's okay because I drop a video actually tomorrow, and it's going to be celebrating my very first year completion of this channel. So super excited to drop the token unlock about this project. But as Tim was talking about earlier, this project is down 80% since its all-time high. And I still have a lot of faith in it. Why? Because essentially it is a governance token, and I understand the use case. The TVL and everything that it entails is not specifically tailored to the price. Crux, what do you mean by this? So Ondo Global Markets just launched less than 6 months ago. They've already acquired over $400 million worth of TVL, and we're talking about tokenized Tesla, tokenized gold, tokenized commodities, and all the hottest commodities that are getting tokenized right now. But then it doesn't stop there, because Ondo just surpassed over $2 billion in overall product management. So you're talking about OUSG, OMMF, you're talking about USDY, which is their yield bearing stablecoin, giving you about 5% or so passively. And I think this is where the disruption happens, is on these RWA plays like an Ondo Finance. So a play could be down 80%, but Crux, here at Crux of Crypto, we are specifically looking at the analytics, what is going on behind the walls, and who the institutions are involved. So does anybody have anything else to say before we jump into our next segment?
I didn't realize that there was we try to find the underbought coin within each narrative. I would actually say there's an underbought stock within the tokenization world, and that is CEPT, Charlie Echo Papa Tango, and that is a SPAC. So make sure you do your own research on what a SPAC is and the risks involved. But that is a SPAC of the company Securitize.
All right. And also my Overrated, I think currently.
I didn't know he was done talking. I was like, I wait for him to talk more.
Yeah, sorry. My Overrated is definitely going to be the privacy coins. So this really sparked out of around where the perp dex is in Q3 of last year. We have this additional narrative after the October 10th event of Zcash in particular, where zero knowledge proofs were on fire. And we still see a lot of projects from Dash to Monero that are still continuing to pump. And if you look at their price chart, they're only down maybe 10-15% from their all-time highs, while the rest of crypto is on fire. So I think typically you'll always have these niches that are still making people money. I think these are the smart people or the smart money, and the people that are manipulating the markets that are making the money. But I think whenever we do go up and right as an overall asset class, that privacy tokens are going to get hurt. So I think it's a feature that you add to a blockchain like zero knowledge proofs, similar to how a smart contract you can add to a Sui or a Solana. But I would not find my identity in a privacy network. I don't think that's like, you should be your selling point. It should just be a feature. So, all right. So let's go ahead and jump into segment 2. And I think this one's even more important because it's, I'll definitely be able to get your fully convicted takes on these. But if you had one, or if you had to bet your reputation on only one crypto trend heading into this year, which one are you choosing and why?
Of the same trends, if I had to bet on just one.
Well, it could be any trend. So if your reputation existed on, is it AI? Is it decentralized science? Is it like something has to pop off in 2026, or you lose your YouTube channel?
I'll go first. I'll make it very simple.
What a dangerous question there.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be L1s. I think Ethereum and Solana are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just think about it like this. This is not a term I hear very often because I think I may have coined it. But think about stablecoin infrastructure plays, right?
Yeah.
Ethereum is far away. GameFi, decentralized science, way cooler, probably more upside eventually. But the institutions are just learning the alphabet at this point. They're just learning how to add. They're not ready to multiply. And for them right now, they're still trying to understand stable coins. But stable coins are up and to the right in terms of market cap that's being added. And that leads the investor to Ethereum and Solana.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a copycat here because I went with a different direction than Shrum did, but we get to the same conclusion. Also, I don't know. I know there was a spinning wheel of death right there while Shrum was talking. So I'm going to reiterate what he was saying on some things, but some of you might hear it for the first time because I think you might have lost his feed. My brain was, when you asked the question, I was like, this is going to be a stupid answer because you're not going to make a whole lot of money on it. But what is the big fight right now in Washington? It's over the stipulations on how stable coins will be treated. Right, you don't invest in stable coins. That you can hold them, and that's the hope that Coinbase is fighting for, is that you can continue to earn yield on holding stable coins. But we're not talking about a ridiculous amount of money. But that is what everyone's fighting about right now. That's what everyone is talking about. We've heard politicians come out and say stable coins are going to they're going to strengthen the dollar. They're going to back it up and continue to give it authority. I don't think there's really anybody going against stable coins, maybe except for like China or Russia, who maybe doesn't want the US dollar to be dominant anymore. But anyone inside the United States who cares about the dollar is going to want to see a strong stable coin enforcement. So because of that, I think that is the natural answer that Shrum got to there is, well, what coins support stable coin usage and yielding and everything else? We're thinking, obviously, Ethereum's the number one that pops off there. Solana's making its way. Heck, even XRP, is up there as well. So I think that, if we're not talking about the biggest return on investment, but we're talking about safe play and like there's probably a very little chance that this ends in the red, I would go L1s as well because of stable coin adoption and use case. Does that mean 10Xs for everybody? No, that's not what it means. It just means this is a year where stable coin and layer ones become very, very crucial to the future of finance. Investment-wise, again, I hate saying I've staked my reputation on it because right as anything gets going positive for the markets, something in Washington happens that screws everything up. Something in the world happens that screws everything up. Right as we think the tariffs might not be a big problem anymore, new tariffs get thrown out. Right as we think, man, it looks like everyone's getting along, we're going to find decisions. Someone disagrees and a bill goes back to the drawing board. So I'm not staking my reputation on saying this has to be bullish, but I think biggest return on your investment probably in the real world asset space. I think looking at the real world asset coins and what's associated there, I said it in my previous take. I do think there will be dumb, nonsensical coins that are not legit and won't make it long term and will be flashes in the pan. But I think that people will make some money on small projects in the real world asset space sometime in 2026. Sometime maybe even in 2027. They won't all be legit. They won't all make it, but there will be a lot of money made in that trend.
Yeah, I added the reputation piece in there just to increase the conviction in there, just so we can make sure we get that one very solid niche in wraps. Now, Crux believes, and I'll show you how to get there, but made in America cryptocurrencies are going to be the ones to really thrive. And I'm here on CoinGecko. What I would do is come over to cryptocurrencies, come down to categories, and typically you could find the biggest ones because it filters it by market cap. And you'll see Made in America cryptocurrencies is a top 10. So, this goes very much in line with what these two gentlemen were talking about earlier with the XRPs of the world and these different picks. But these are what is building out the stablecoin infrastructure as well. So we know RLUSD just broke into the top 10 in terms of what a stablecoin is. Solana's up there. We're starting to compete with the Trons of the world, which currently actually run the global volume for stablecoin volume. So I think Made in America cryptocurrencies are going to be the big winner of this Clarity Act or this market structure bill that's currently underway. And I think most of these cryptocurrencies here, at least the top 15 or so, are pretty good asymmetric bets. You see the Avalanches, the Chainlinks, the Cardanos. These are all layer ones. They're building the infrastructure of these stablecoins. And I think these are going to be the big winners. Now, I have a follow-up question for you two gentlemen. And we'll start with Tim. Is there anything that would make you change your mind on that answer that you chose? For example, like if you chose RWA, do you see something that could possibly get in the way of, RWA actually playing out, maybe stifling innovation or whatever it is? I would like your take on that.
A major recession or a collapse of the economy. And I'm not talking about a healthy correction. The stock market probably needs to have some form of a correction early to mid 2026. Is it going to be 10%? Is it going to be 15%? I don't think it necessarily has to be like a 20% correction like the SP 500 or the QQQ or anything. So even if that happens, I still think tokenization does well. But if we see a collapse, if that happens, gold and silver will skyrocket as people move towards those hard commodities. The world has shown it's not quite ready to call Bitcoin what we call it in the crypto world. We call Bitcoin digital gold. We know that long-term Bitcoin is probably more valuable than gold. It will be hold greater, but that day is not today. And so until Bitcoin and crypto get a stronger foundation, don't put it in the same commodity class as oil and gold and copper and silver. And, there's probably a bunch of others I'm forgetting, but economic collapse happens, put all this on pause, right? Crypto is a risk on asset space. It will only thrive when there's heavy liquidity and confidence about the markets. When there's a lack of confidence, look at it. Like even within the 4-year cycle that some people still cling to and say, this is what's going to happen. It's coincidental that every single bear market, every 4 years, there was economic uncertainty or /plus lack of liquidity. Okay. So when you have a lack, the question now becomes, can we solve the Clarity Act fiasco? Can we solve the tariff fiasco? Can we solve the foreign fiasco? And that has to do with not just Russia and Ukraine, China and Taiwan. Now bring into the fold America and Venezuela / America and Greenland, right? Do these things turn into something massive that pumps a lot of fear, or are they settled, bring us confidence? And that's going to be a major bull run if that happens.
All right. T-Shroom, do you have anything else you would like to add to this?
Tim just inspired so much thinking there. But the original question was essentially, what would make me less bullish on essentially layer ones?
Right.
It would have to be something, I guess, at the governmental level, kind of showing, like, I suppose if a different executive branch is elected that comes in and wants to do away with all the progress that's been made for blockchain technology, that would potentially be pretty chilling to layer ones. I also think if there's a major hack or outage, that could potentially be something that deters investors. But I don't think there's a whole lot that stops this train, Crux, to be honest with you. I suppose if a major institutional leader that has been a champion, so meaning not somebody like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, who's recently flipped bullish on crypto, but somebody who's been a champion like Standard Chartered or Franklin Templeton, someone who has kind of positioned themselves as an institution with clout and has made positive comments on crypto historically. If they come out and say, hey, guys, look, we've run a couple of trials, we've come from some tests on this stuff, and it isn't better than the servers we got already, then that could be a very big problem. But I don't see that happening.
Right. Now, you guys know on this channel, I specifically cover a lot of times gems, and then I also jump into the higher caps like the Ondo Finances and the Solanas of the world. But something very interesting we talked about, is like the regulation, the Clarity Act, and gold and these types of things. But I want to make sure that you guys all know that we do have a Whop down below. You could check out the link there. But we have 3 different memberships, and this Whop links you to our Discord server with over 4,000 people in there. So The first membership is the Essentials. This is our VIP trading group. We have over 5 pro traders that are actively crushing it, dropping trade signals in there. Next up, we have the Academy, which us three, you have Tim, who basically takes your trading from rookie to pro through a 50-plus course series. I help you build that perfect portfolio over there in the Academy. And then lastly, we have the Gem Hunters, which is a group that I personally run. And we've actually been crushing it in Discord. So thank you guys for helping support. And again, you can find those links down below. Now, as far as if you're just now tuning in, we already discussed, a couple different questions, but today we're breaking down which crypto trends actually matter in 2026. And I have Tim Warren and Taylor Shrum here with me to answer some of these questions. And let's go ahead and jump into the poll. So we'll go ahead and look at what's going on over there because I want to get you guys involved in this conversation. So the poll currently says, which crypto trend do you think will matter the most in 2026? We have RWAs leading the way at 60%. Next up, we have artificial intelligence. So this definitely surprised me because I thought decentralized finance would be a little bit higher. If we look at the biggest apps in crypto, you have the Aves of the world, you have the Uniswaps, etc. This, in my opinion, is what crypto was created to do. Allow these liquidity pools for Crux of Crypto here in El Paso, Texas, to be able to get passive yield by lending his stuff out, bypassing what the banks have already established here in the United States. And I know that it's a pretty big claim because the Satoshi Nakamoto's of the world wanted to prevent the third parties from getting involved or taking away our yield. But for the first time in a technology, the people have the power. And that's why I love this channel. I love bringing this content to you guys. But most importantly, I love bringing these two guests to you guys. So let's go ahead and jump into the very third segment. And again, you can go back and check out the other two after this, but stick with us on this one. Walk me through, Tim, how you think 2026 plays out at a high level. So we're talking regulation, ETFs, institutions, even the global risks, and how that shapes crypto starting from today.
I'm going to start by referencing the poll. That poll kind of aligns with the stuff I was saying earlier. And I know you guys are surprised. I think this is a level, though, where you got to remember fundamentals are fantastic. Study your fundamentals. Know the long-term stuff, especially for longer-term investors. Like if you're not just in here for a year and then you're getting out and running for the hills, you don't want to invest anymore. Study the fundamentals in depth. But the reason why I can tell you right now that poll is leaning that direction is because that's just where we're going. Right now, this is not the retail bull market that 2021 was, or 2017, or 2013, right? All of those were retail heavy, decentralized heavy, stick it to the man heavy bull markets. This is the institutional bull market. Okay. It's not going to be the retail that decides what's hot and what's not. It's going to be the institutions. So why would institutions, and when I say institutions, we're talking big money and banks, why would they go all in on DeFi? Right. I'm not saying they won't at all, but I'm saying why would that be their top priority? No, their top priority is going to be the technology, real world assets, getting stocks and their assets into the Web3 blockchain world that is so much more efficient and affordable than the current system. And then the other one is we are watching the emergence of AI change the way the world operates. I mean, there will be jobs lost because of AI, but at the same time, I don't know when this happens. Elon Musk has come out and said poverty is going to get wiped off the planet very soon because of AI. Why? Because we're going to create this world where so much is being done by robots and AI that jobs actually aren't important. I think the amount of entertainers, shows, sports, YouTubers, jokesters, TikTokers, that will increase. And if people want to make additional income or they want to make more money, that's how they'll go about it. But the reality is that's where institutions are right now. They're going to go invest in the future, and the future is AI for the economy and real world assets for the future of finance. DeFi is really awesome. It's really cool. I do think it rears its head into the future when people can focus more on when people don't have to worry about putting food on the table. It's a lot easier then for people to say, yeah, why am I just blindly trusting these massive banks. Let me be my own bank and go the DeFi route, right? So that's the reason why that poll's going that way. That's the reason I had my take. As far as how 2026 is going to play out, I'm not going to say that 2026 has followed exactly what I said it would do. I think that I would have imagined we'd be a little higher by now, definitely in the altcoin space, but even Bitcoin. But I did say, and we'll see how this plays out, I did predict last summer that while I thought the 4-year cycle was dead and gone, that there would be a convenient way that October, November was our pinpointed time for a top. I did think there was going to be a pullback. I did think that Bitcoin and crypto would pull back, and that 4-year cyclist would say, there we go, 4-year cycle still around, it's still enacted. But the whole thing was going to be, there's got to be a way for institutions to buy in cheap before the major bull run. And my prediction was retail would sell in October or November. The markets would drop. Retail would be convinced the bear market was here, only for 2026 to be a major boom as institutions buy at the dip and rally into the future. And again, we're not sitting at all-time highs. There's a whole lot of things on the table that could still cause 2026 to be bearish. So I'm not sitting here saying, guys, I was right. I'm perfect on this. I want to see it play out the rest of the way with you guys as well. But we are watching whales and institutions buying up, especially things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana right now in bulk. I mean, the on-chain metrics are popping off the chart with new whale wallets. Who do you think the new whale wallets are? It's institutions. They're the ones with that amount of money to be considered crypto whales that are buying these cheap prices. I think while there's a lot of drama and stuff going on, I do see the Clarity Act passing. I think Charles Hoskinson, who recently predicted it will not happen in Q1, I think he's going to be wrong. I think we will see a Clarity Act. Will it be perfect? Will it be everything we want? Probably not. That's not how government works. But I think we have a Clarity Act passed in Q1. I think that while rate cuts might not happen for quite some time, I don't think rate cuts are the big issue. I think liquidity is the big issue. We're already watching the existing Fed, right, with Jerome Powell, whether you love him or not. Some people hate him. Jerome Powell's already adding liquidity in the markets. Can you imagine what's going to happen in May when he's replaced with a more aggressive Fed chairman who's going to not only add even more liquidity, he's going to work night and day to slash rates back down to zero. So give me clarity, give me liquidity, and give me the excuse for institutions to buy cheap. This all spells a massive bull run for 2026. Could it be disrupted? Could Trump do something and blow all this up? Absolutely. But I'll go back. This is my last thing I'll say, and then I'll throw it over to you guys. The other big reason that I think that we're going to have a very big 2026, and it's going to sound funny because a lot of people I've heard say, we're heading into a midterm year, which historically is a bearish year. At least the first half it's bearish, and the back half figured itself out. I think that Trump and the Republicans desperately want to win in November. They desperately want to win the midterms. You don't do that if your whole year leading up to it has been chaotic, if the economy's been pulling back, if people are frustrated. You got to have some big wins. The economy boosting would be a big win. Money going back to people, so more liquidity flooding into the markets would be a big win. I'm not even getting to the other political things that some people consider win, other people consider losses. My overall point is I see Trump pulling a lot of strings. I see the White House pulling a lot of strings to ensure that 2026 is a
Taylor, what you got?
Yeah, I think those were really well said, Tim. And somebody in the chat said that I'm a very humble guy. So I don't get that. MJ7F said, Shrum, you are a dude. You are so humble.
You haven't seen him out on the golf course. He's such a jerk.
Yeah. No, but Tim, you said it pretty eloquently. Liquidity, regulatory clarity, and the midterms. I think the midterms is a bit of a wild card that could go one of two ways, but I think the first two are the wind in the sails for crypto to move to the upside. The one that I would add to that came very quickly, dominated the news cycle, and left, and nobody's talking about it, is the Morgan Stanley ETFs. The Morgan Stanley announced that they're coming out with spot ETFs for Ethereum, Solana, and Bitcoin. They would not be doing this at a time when they think that interest in Bitcoin, in Solana, and Ethereum is going to go down, right? Those ETFs have not been approved. The SEC still has to come in and approve them. They are going to be approved because of who Morgan Stanley is. And so I think that is going to be a very critical moment. And I also think that if you're a swing trader right now, you want to keep that in mind, right? Not even saying that price will go up or down into that event, but just keep in mind, until those Morgan Stanley ETFs are live, there's an argument to be made that price should be suppressed, but not go down below a certain level to reduce interest and even further erode investor sentiment. Morgan Stanley wants you to come in and buy their ETFs. They want to compete with BlackRock. They want to look good to the rest of Wall Street, and they're behind. So they've got some catching up to do. They're going to be spending some money to entice investors to come and buy this new, awesome, sexy thing that they've never really done any research into before. Morgan Stanley is going to help them do that research through paid education, right? Crypto is on a hero's journey. A lot of people forget that, Bitcoin was worth a cent. It was worth 10 cents. It was worth $100. It was worth $1,000, just in 2010. We've come a long way. This has not been a story of Bitcoin coming onto the scene and then just getting annihilated and nobody cares about it anymore. This is the hero has overcome battles again and again and again and again and again. And Ethereum got on the comes onto the scene and it overcomes battles again and again and again and again and again. And then you have, some more of its friends join in, provide these unique innovations and different ways to answer the questions of smart contracts and decentralization. And they've been overcoming again and again. The hero of this story does not lose. The hero of the story is going to continue to face new battles. Right now, we're in one. To me, it seems kind of clear how this story is going to unfold. But this is not the time to get shaken out. This is the time to hodl, and this is the time to potentially rotate into some crypto stocks that maybe you're underweight on. Because I do think that the stock market side of crypto is going to see a lot of upside here pretty soon as well. So Morgan Stanley ETFs, they would not be introducing those if they thought that interest was going to be dwindling in 2026 for crypto. And then everything that Tim said, I don't need to say those again. But just remember, crypto is the up and coming young new fashion, right? That is not the force that gets stopped. That is the force that the incumbent attempts to stop and fails. That's the story that played out again and again and again since we've been documenting language on this planet. So that's what I'm putting my money on.
All right. And now I'm not going to play the bear of the room, but I will say as a 4-year cycle theorist, I'm still about 60-40 in terms of we will have much lower prices later this year. We'll have much lower prices later this year, but I've been super convicted on this, and I'll be honest that as the more research I do and I see these institutions, I see these Ondos, I see these ETFs, Fidelity, State Street, Vanguard, all coming into crypto, and I'm just trying to figure out who holds the Bitcoin because I think that's super important. But this is probably the biggest stat of all of them that I don't hear many people talking about, but it takes about half as long to go from a bear market low back to an all-time high. So this time, this last previous bull market, we actually hit an all-time high before the halving. So that was definitely an outlier. But if we actually get there in only, let's just say 6 months, as opposed to a year after a Bitcoin bottom, it could we could actually bottom out going into Q3 this year and actually hit a new all-time high early 2027. So that's where I would more likely place my bet. I do think we have much lower going ahead, but I think the recovery is going to be fast. It's going to be expedited because of people wanting to front run, and smart money is going to front run, and that's why we get to all-time highs twice as fast every single cycle. So those are just my takes. Would you guys like a segment to rebuttal any of this before we jump into? Go ahead.
We have this conversation all the time, so I'm not saying anything new to you. I just think that I think it's not wise to depend. I'm not saying don't analyze it. I'm not saying don't be aware of it. Mm-hmm. I think it's not wise to depend upon the way crypto's moved in the past. I mean, you said so yourself. Never had Bitcoin ever hit an all-time high so fast as it did this last cycle, right? So there's one. Never had crypto gone this long without an altcoin season, after a bear market bottom. That's happened. Never have we seen this much institutional interest. That keeps happening. There's a list a mile long of things that had never happened before, but have now happened. The only thing that four-year cyclists hang their hat on right now, they're going to say, yep, that happened right on schedule, is a potential top, right? We hit 126,000 at the right time. But at the moment, we still have not even put in a lower low just yet. And I realize once we put in a lower low, you're already down almost 40, maybe more than 40%. It feels like, man, I should have got out sooner than that. But the reality is we haven't, in the world of crypto, entered the true stage of what a bear market is. But I even go back to say, again, while I'm aware of saying, oh, what happened in 2021? What happened in 2017? What happened in 2019? Let's look at what we have comparison-wise. It's not the same traders. It's not the same people. I think it's a lot better, especially if we're just going to talk about Bitcoin for a second instead of all the crypto markets. I think it's actually something to say, let's look at how gold performed when its ETF was created in 2003. And what you see happen is a 8-year-long massive bull run with a hiccup in 2008 because of the recession, because of the great collapse there. But even when all things are considered, let me actually let's show the gold chart here really quickly. If you share my screen, take a look at what gold looked like after the ETF was launched. And again, I don't know, you got to tell me. Okay, there we go. There's a little delay here. The ETF for gold launched back in let's see, right in here somewhere, the summer of 23. So we'll just go ahead and put a little mark somewhere in here. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head right now. It was a while ago I did this research. Take a look at what gold did until the top of the real bull market, right? We didn't have a prolonged pullback for gold until all the way over here in the end of 2011. Of course, then gold would have this big collapse for multiple years down into 2016. Coincidentally, that was the emergence of Bitcoin during that same time period. But I digress. With the exception of, you have a pause. There really wasn't major pullback. A pause in 06, 07. Big collapse there, but still, all things considered, 08 crisis. All the 08 crisis did was, after a skyrocketing all-time high, brought us back down to the highs of pretty much 06. And then we continued on our merry way. I think there's a very good chance that Bitcoin's chart, not going to look identical, but could be very similar to this chart in terms of as people realize they can flood their value into Bitcoin. And the reason for this, you can go off my screen now. The reason I have this take is, again, looking at how 2013 rallied and how 2017 rallied and how 2021 rallied. That was the story of retail interest and retail movers deciding when to buy and when to sell. The institutions now are here. The institutions are the ones that are going to decide when we're going to be bullish and when we're going to be bearish. The concept of the four-year cycle being built on the halving cycle, the halving cycle is significant. Supply inflow is a big deal. But in my personal opinion, I'm interested to see if you guys disagree. I'm interested to see if chat disagrees. In my opinion, we are no longer, the last significant halving event was the one that happened back in 2024. 2028's halving event will not be significant supply shock. Guys, we're already pushing 20 million tokens in existence, and there's going to be 21 million total. And the last million are not going to come for about 100 years. None of us watching this or on this show right now will be alive to see all 21 million Bitcoin in existence. Heck, some of our children won't even still be alive at that time. That's how far out we're talking about for less than 5% of the total supply of what Bitcoin's going to have. Institutions are the drivers here. It's no longer the four-year cycle. It's no longer a supply shock. It is the institutions. So watch the moves of institutions. Look at the SPY. Look at gold. Look at commodities. That's going to be your trajectory for trying to predict when things will be bullish and when things will be bearish. Not, well, guys, it's 4 years after the last top, so now we got to top out and go into a long 1-year bear market. That's not the game anymore. That's not how they play. So, people can disagree or agree with me, and I tell people all the time, I respect the four-year cycle. To be fair, right now, until we see new all-time high, the four-year cycle could be a thing. I just don't think it checks the logic box for a plethora of reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 9 out of 10 people here currently in this live stream actually agree with you, Tim. So 90% of people you have sold The 4-year cycle's over. Let's get T-Shroom's real quick take on this. Let's jump into like a quick segment of Q&A and we'll wrap this thing out. T, what you got as far as the 4-year cycle?
So I think the 4-year cycle has been a thing. I think the mining dynamic has been something that has moved markets to kind of organize within a 4-year cycle. I think that going forward, we are now out of that dynamic being as significant as it was in the past. I think there's no doubt that in Q4, there was some OG whale selling. And in 2025, starting from like July, there was OG whale selling that caused a 4-year like cycle sell-off to occur. And so I think there was still some like echoes of that dynamic, and we'll probably continue to see echoes of that dynamic. But I think people will lose money if they are thinking that if they're trading based on the 4-year cycle. I think that it's kind of a ghost that is going to come up and look real every once in a while, but it really isn't. What matters in 2026 is liquidity and clarity. It's kind of the same answers to what we talked about in the last question. If we don't get liquidity, if by some act the Federal Reserve goes into like military mode and they just hunker down somehow and they make it to where Jerome Powell can't leave in May, and we just don't get any kind of QE, which doesn't seem likely because they've already started, then yeah, I think we could see a bear market for crypto and for Bitcoin. I think though that as long as we get some sort of semblance of QE, then we will, and Bitcoin will be sniffing that out better than any other asset on the market. It will sniff out when the Fed is going to be printing money, and not just the Fed, but also how the heck is the Bank of Japan going to be resolved? There's going to have to probably be some fiat printed somewhere in the world in order to bail out the Bank of Japan if that's going to happen this decade. And then the other thing is the regulatory clarity. It's so the miners don't have as much pull. They still have a decent amount of pull because the miners have like I think it's like 1.8 million Bitcoin. So they still have a lot of Bitcoin. And if they sold all that today, you best believe we're going to be in a crypto winter. But it's not necessarily in their interest to do that. They still hold a lot of supply, but they're not getting more supply. And so it disincentivizes them to part with that which is replacing the dollar, right?
And I think I want to interrupt Shrum for just a second because I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it's important people know this. When, until more recently, did these mining companies have the option to raise funds to keep paying their bills? I mean, in the past, they sold Bitcoin so they could keep operations open. Now we have all these massive companies who just raise capital other ways. They don't have to sell off their Bitcoin to fund the miners. They just go raise capital from institutional investors who want to buy their stock. It's a completely different world than 4 years ago.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that the miners have no incentive to sell Bitcoin, but the incentive to sell Bitcoin is becoming eroded by the very thing that Satoshi set up, which is the 4-year cycle, the 4-year mining cycle. So you got to have liquidity and you got to have the regulatory clarity. Yeah. What we saw on October 10th, I don't think that that's going to happen anywhere near as often, if at all, in the future, because what October 10th, somebody did something probably illegal, right? According to what the Clarity Act is going to bring in. But it's not illegal until the laws of the United States have said it's illegal. Maybe it's illegal in Europe under MiCA, but probably not. So when regulatory clarity comes in, it's not just a cheerleading event like, yay, now we have a bill that's passed again. No, now there's teeth, and people can't go around, these exchanges can't go around throwing their weight around and liquidating hundreds of billions of dollars in crypto positions. Will that ever happen again? Maybe, but I don't think we're going to see that and that's going to reduce volatility, which will raise different problems and different issues. Mm-hmm. But I think 2026, it's all lining up to be quite bullish, unless we have some signal that liquidity isn't going to come in. If there's some reason they have to hike rates, if inflation gets out of control, then you might start asking the question, okay, things could potentially have downside for crypto and for risk across the board. And then if regulatory clarity just loses steam, which they're trying to make it seem like it's losing steam now, what are the banks really good at? The banks are really good at, in North America at least, at gentrifying real estate opportunities. They're really good at looking at a plot of land, and saying, where's the city going to build into? And then going and buying that area and then gentrifying it. And I would make the argument that the banks are currently in the later stages of gentrifying crypto in general. They've looked at what this space does. They've looked at the technology. They've seen what they can compete with, what they can't compete with, and they've gone all in. It's pretty obvious they've gone all in. And I think that there's even quite a bit to say that they've gone in way more than we know. And they're looking at crypto as a giant stallion of a horse that's going to carry some of the brands into the next decade, into the next century, like Wells Fargo, like Morgan Stanley, and who knows if they'll be successful in that type of a conversion to the new generation. But in any case, they're looking at crypto as an opportunity to come. And I think that they've come in and gentrified. And unfortunately, the negative outcome of that is a lot of the retail that was in crypto has been shaken out, and they've moved out of the neighborhood because they can't afford it anymore. Not from a money standpoint, but they can't afford the time standpoint. They can't afford to hang out anymore. They don't have the time value that the banks have. So that's important to realize. Presents in terms of new tools that these service providers can offer to their clients. So people don't see that clearly because they're not spending enough time really understanding what institutions want. And I guess I am claiming that I do understand that. Very bullish on 2026.
Well, I do appreciate both of you guys. We're coming up at the top of the hour. Tons of content here, and you guys actually helped me push towards that 50% probability of 2026 breaking the 4-year cycle. So you guys keep on pushing it. I love it what we're building here. But and both of y'all's links are down below. Make sure you follow these two guys. They are awesome in the space. They're good. And do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, that's great to be here. Make sure everybody is subscribed to the channel here. And I'll say this to kind of be my definitive argument right here. Great channels like this, like mine, like Shrum's, so many others, the views are down. The subscribers are down. Things are down. This is our livelihood, so we're aware of this every single day. This is what makes me so bullish, right? If you go back and look at bottom periods of major pullbacks, it's also associated, weirdly enough, with social media interest. Why? Because retail watches YouTube. They watch social media. YouTube and social media overall in the crypto world is at lows, extreme lows. So all the content creators out there, they're hurting. They want the likes. They want subscribes. We need them from you. But it also makes us bullish if we know what we're doing. We're buying as much as we can right now because these are the signs to buy, not the signs to give up and move on.
Shrum, you have anything?
Yeah, I would just say if you've been an investor in crypto and you've fallen in love with some assets, you gotta fall in love with what God intended you to fall in love with, which is your family, right? And really in your local community. Do not continue to hold stuff that is losing again and again and again and again, right? And I would also encourage you, if you still want to continue to invest, to look into some of the stocks, right, that are getting involved in crypto. I'm talking about Bullish. I'm talking about Securitize. I'm talking about Coinbase, talking about Robinhood. Does this sound weird coming from someone who is passionate about decentralization and crypto? It might, but the future does not look like the past. And crypto has evolved 15 years worth of development in 1 year. Every 1 year that crypto has been around, it's evolved very, very quickly. And so the speed at which you need to adapt and rethink about your thesis and fall out of love with some of the theses that you are too reluctant to reject and invalidate, it's going to be to your own detriment. And at the same time, you're looking around you and there's all these crazy opportunities that are going on. And across the pond, there's all these crazy opportunities in AI. And it looks like in metals too. I have invested quite a bit into copper mining stocks. I have invested quite a bit into AI stocks. This is not the time to just hunker down into some smaller mid-cap crypto and just fall in love with it and defend it to the grave. I don't think that that's the market that's not going to be the market we're moving into is not going to be favorable to that type of a mindset. is going to be very favorable to people who are nimble and who understand the incentives of the institutions.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to appreciate both of you guys for giving me the confidence to come up here and actually host for my very first live stream. You guys have helped me build the confidence over the years, and I do appreciate both of you guys as brothers in Christ, and love you both. So, you guys just witnessed the very first live stream on the Crux of Crypto YouTube channel. Now, we are just getting started here. I have this video. It's going to go out tomorrow, and it's all about the token unlock and also the next phase going into tokenization. I bring in the BlackRocks, the Fidelities, the State Streets of the world, and I explained why you should not be selling all of your Ondo tokens currently. So again, this video will be the 1-year anniversary. The very first video I dropped on this channel was Ondo Finance a year ago, and I talked about the products and these types of things. So if this is your first time, I am Crux, and I do appreciate your support. There's a lot of information if you're just now tuning in. Make sure you go back and watch this. Share it with a friend. Get the word out there that crypto is here to stay. And I have one last question for you guys. So if you, and this is for you guys, so if you had to pick one trend after this discussion, drop it in chat or the comments, and we'll check back in 48 hours. I'll catch you guys